So I grew up in India till 6 years old, and then I came over when I was 7 years old. And I have very little memories before six, but I know that there's the Indian culture is very collectivism, whereas the Western culture is very individualism. And I love what the part I miss about the Indian culture, which I have nothing of right now, is that they welcome you in their home. They help you out. Like I remember when we were young, we had like 15 to 30 families that we were connected with in the Midwest. And when a person had a heart attack, a friend, our we called everybody uncle and aunt, and an uncle of ours had a heart attack like 400 miles away, and my parents and all the community, like for 4 or 5 weeks, they took 5 days each to go and help. But the biggest issue with the community that although there is empathy, overt empathy, there wasn't wholehearted empathy, and there was shame and there was judgment underneath it. So I believe that true empathy is creating wholehearted communities where we learn to give feedback and not judgment and criticism, and we do help each other. We share meals together. When someone's sick, we go and help them out, and when someone needs something, we like. I love the community I had as a child, but I didn't like the talking afterwards. I didn't like the criticism, and I hated the shame that was so toxic. So I remember at 7 years old thinking, why can't people just speak from their heart, from their love, from their connection and their empathy, and why do they put up a front and not just speak their heart? And we would have so much more love to go around the world. And I remember being shamed for being kind and compassionate and giving. And I think that our culture has gotten to a point where the individualism and the competitiveness rather than collaboration is the reason that, and technology are the reasons that we are not having face-to-face connection, and we're not in a community setting. And it's very disappointing. But I think when you have real empathy without the shame, I think we would be all better off. We would have the communities. And in the movie I Am by Tom Shadyac, he talks about that the underlying problem of our world is that we're hardwired for connection, and yet we have homeless people, we have labeled people, and we don't use our empathy. It is not revered in our society. And I feel that if we could find a way to let go of our egos and our need to perform and perfect and to our individualism, empathy would grow. And I feel that those are the barriers. And wholehearted empathy isn't perfect. It doesn't mean that there aren't any conflicts. And I think empathy, like you've described, would help the feedback and help resolve conflict. And so we could create more communities. But I think we all go into our own busyness, and our busyness has become a status symbol, and that we don't take time out to help each other. And I think it's very disappointing not to have a community where people actually want to support each other without a religious framework around it. And I only see it with a religious framework, even those I found. But I really did like the community I had as a child. I just didn't like the shaming part of it. And I would love to see true empathy coming through people's hearts and creating, connections where people support each other. And I think that that's where empathy will grow and thrive. And that's where I think the paradigm of our whole system will change, because we won't, if we let go of the shame and the individualistic and competitiveness and go towards a collaboration, and that the sun doesn't shine any brighter on one person than the other, and we each have a special gift to give in the world. If we embrace that we each have a gift, and we all are better off when each of us can share our gifts, then there is no need for competition, and community would thrive. And I think the only way to do that is with empathy. And empathy, the benefit of empathy would be community connection, no competition, and we wouldn't have these laws that label and isolate people and make life so much more complicated. So I think empathy is the solution to what underneath the society is shame and individualism and competitiveness.
Thanks for that. Is there any responses, any comments from anyone who would like to respond to that story? Well, I'll start then. For me, it's you're saying that empathy leads to a sense of community of support, and that there seems to be all these blocks to creating that people aren't being empathic, fully empathic. There might be partial empathy, like in India, there was a lot of care and empathy for each other, but then there was also mixed in shame, which was a block to empathy. And so I'm just hearing kind of a dream for a deep sense of empathy where we resolve conflict, and it's really about collaboration and not using shame and so forth to block it, and have this full benefit of empathy, which would be to create really deep community. So that's what I was hearing.
Yeah, can I add something else? Can you add it?
Yeah, please.
Okay. When I grew up, where status and material wealth was, even though I came from India, my dad decided that was the most important thing in the world. And where I got the most empathy and the most connection was with when I worked at a mental health outreach program, and the people had stripped down to nothing. They had nothing. They had been labeled, isolated, locked up, and that's where I felt the most heart connection. That's where I felt, because nobody had anything. They didn't have material wealth. They didn't have social status, and they could just live with their open heart. And that's where I was able to let go of so much of the discrimination that was put in me by my parents and all the judgments and the shame. And when you strip yourself of all, and Eckhart Tolle talks about that, if you just are your heart, your being, your soul, that's where you can connect. And I feel like the people who have been stripped of everything actually can connect with their biggest heart space. And that was a better I learned more from the people who have been degraded by society, homeless and everything, and I grew more as a human being in that situation than I did from a big name school with, Harvard brother, doctors, all that. I didn't grow as a human being, and I think humanity has to grow from the space of the soul and not from the space of external needs and external pursuits. And I think that empathy can only be, it benefits from the soul. And I think the soul has to be from the inside out, not from the outside in. And if we keep pursuing empathy from the outside in, it's not going to work. We actually have to have it from the inside in. We have to help our brothers and sisters who are homeless, or in the other parts of the country and the world. And America should not have 20% of the kids being hungry. We shouldn't be having the things happening that we have. And I feel that it's very sad that every day we live in this society where we're shutting our doors, where kids are being, not loved and cared for, and parents don't know who they are themselves, and we're continuing to perpetuate a cycle that I don't see how it's going to change without deep, deep empathy for everybody and all of humanity. And I think we all have to go to the common denominator of humanity and forget whether we're male, female, educated, money, whatever our gender, whatever it is. We have to just go to the common denominator of humanity.
Would anyone like to reflect on that, what they heard?
Yeah, I wanted to say I really appreciated your story, and I think that you speak for a lot of people. We all have families, and it's really interesting about how the format of a family or culture creates there's rules about how it is that you get to have empathy. And so what I'm seeing is what replaces empathy in social and family structures is not so much empathy but acceptance, approval, validation and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't mean they really feel you.
I think
But
they do feel you, and that's where you get the acceptance. When they feel you is where I felt
oh,
the
what I'm
acceptance.
saying, I'm saying
Yeah.
what replaces
Oh, okay.
empathy in families has more to do with how you don't stress out the family, how you don't cause problems, how you don't ask them to feel, for God's sakes. Just get along.
When I was hearing Renu talk, the thing that I heard the most was when she said she was stripped of absolutely everything. And what popped into my mind and keeps running through my mind is Janis Joplin when she said freedom is another word for nothing left to lose. I relate that to what Renu was saying. Those people were free. They didn't have any competitiveness, or they didn't need acceptance from anyone. They didn't have anything to lose, so they could just be free and be themselves.